Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is the Business and AI podcast, where we break down the ideas and forces that are reshaping our digital future and how they affect us in business. So, if you're like me, you enjoy reading business and AI books, this is a place to be. So, today we are going to be unpacking chapter 12 of our third book, Supremacy, AI, ChatGPT, and the Race That Will Change the World. This book is written by Pamela Olsen, and the title of chapter 12 is Mythbusters. So, in this chapter, the author challenges the grand narratives we often hear about AI. That is, that it is all powerful and that it is an objective force, or that its development is unstoppable. The author doesn't just make assertions, the author brings us real examples that debunk these myths and force us to look closer at the limitations and biases inherent in our current technologies. So, over the next 10 minutes or so, I will give a detailed summary of this chapter with examples and then share reviews, the things that, went great, the things that could have gone better, and practical insights we could draw from this chapter, and as usual, questions for reflection from this chapter. So, settle right in, let's get started. So, let's start by debunking the omnipotence myth. The author begins by tearing down the idea that AI is a kind of magic bullet. For instance, the author describes a scenario where a popular generative AI tool was asked to create a digital portrait of a visionary leader. Instead of generating a diverse or uniquely creative image, the tool defaulted to a very generic white male likeness. So this isn't a quirk. It's a window into how the data these systems learn from are steeped in historical biases. The author uses this as example to illustrate that the so-called miracle of AI is largely built on enormous data sets and the limitations of the algorithms that, process them. So rather than imagine from an inexplicable spark of genius, these outputs are a mirror of the biases present in their training data. So let's also move on to the illusion of objectivity. The author dismantles the belief that AI is inherently objective. The author recounts another striking case when a generative AI system was given a prompt to generate news headlines on current events. The outputs were alarmingly uniform, often reflecting stereotypical language and political bias. Olson details how, despite claims of neutrality, the algorithm's reliance on historical and cultural data meant that the headlines produced biases that have long been part of media narratives. This example is crucial because it shows us that what we may call objective machine decisions are in fact tainted by the prejudices of their creators and data sources. So the third myth we'll be going to is that of exponential progress or not. Alison also challenges the notion that AI progress is a never-ending exponential curve. In one example, she describes a case where a breakthrough in natural language processing was heralded as a quantum leap. However, the chapter reveals that this breakthrough was not a sudden burst of innovation, but rather the result of incremental improvements and tremendous amount of computational power over several years. Also points out that while headlines might shout revolution, the reality is far more measured and iterative. That is, a process that involves many false starts and recalibrations. So, what are the myths versus reality in AI social impact? Olsen tackles the dichotomy between the utopian and dystopian visions of AI societal impact. One particularly memorable example she discusses involves a large tech company deploying an AI-powered recruitment tool. I'm sure we all know who that is. Initially touted as a way to eliminate human bias, the tool ended up favoring certain demographics because the historical hiring data it was trained on was skewed. This case underscores Olson's point that the promise of AI solving societal problems come with hidden costs like reinforcing inequality and even contributing to surveillance and privacy breaches. So let's for 1 second, 1 minute actually, sum up this chapter's key messages. The first one is that AI is not omnipotent. Outputs are deeply influenced by data and algorithms behind it. The second, objectivity is an illusion. That's because biases inherent in historical data shape AI's decisions. The third one, exponential progress is overstated. That means that, the breakthroughs are a product of long incremental efforts rather than sudden miracles as the news headlines make it sound. And the third one is that social impact is complex. AI has transformative potential, but its deployment can lead to unintended and sometimes problematic outcomes. So those are 4 myths we just unpacked. Let's move on to our next segment, and that would be just examining what went really, really well. So first, the rich and concrete examples given by the author, um, I think was highly effective because um, we don't just have assertions, we have tangible examples describing each claim or each myth debunking that was made, right? Also, the author is careful not to paint AI as an unmitigated failure or miracle. Instead, she presents a balanced view that acknowledges the tremendous engineering behind these systems while cautioning against overblown claims. And I think the third one would be timely relevance. This book was written in 2024, that was last year. So, with the current debate about AI bias and reliability of generative models in the news, the points of the author in this book are more relevant than ever. The discussion reminds us that while AI tools like ChatGPT can produce impressive results, they also have real limitations and ethical challenges that need addressing. So let's move on to what could have been better. So while the chapter's examples are clear, some technically savvy listeners' minds, find the explanations a bit tacky. A higher, a deeper dive into, say, the specific ways in which training data biases are embedded in algorithmic processes could add another layer of understanding for those who want a more granular detail. Also, even though the narrative is powerful, the chapter might have been richer with more voices. For example, adding insights from independent researchers or those from underrepresented communities who have experienced algorithmic bias firsthand could have offered a more comprehensive view of AI's social impact. But although the chapter does a fine job of debunking myths, it could go further in exploring the long-term consequences. How might these myths evolve as AI mature? A forward-looking discussion on the potential future shift, the potential future shifts in public perception and policy would have been a welcome addition to this chapter. So how is this relevant to us today? That's the next segment we are going into. So we live in a very fast-paced tech landscape where AI tools are rapidly integrated into everything from social media algorithms to customer service chatbots. So understanding these myths, it's very critical. For example, Recent controversies over biased hiring algorithms and AI-generated misinformation in the media underscores the need for a realistic, balanced view, right? So these authors' insights help us navigate the terrain by reminding us to look beneath the surface of the hype and ask hard questions about fairness, accuracy, and ethical responsibility. So this is relevant because everything we've talked about right now is happening right now. So behind all of the hype, stop for a minute and ask yourself, how is this fair? How accurate is this? Does this propagate bias? You know, how is this ethically responsible? Am I ethically in my use of this AI or in the way that data is gathered to train it and all that? How ethically responsible is it? So that's what we are saying in this segment. And let's move on to look at practical applications. How do we apply the things we have read in this chapter practically? So I'd say the first one is critical news consumption. Like when you see a headline claiming AI revolution or unprecedented breakthrough, pause to ask yourself, what's the story behind this? Is this a leap in capability or is it the product of incremental improvement over time? And I'm almost always sure that it's a product of incremental improvement over time. So the second one would be to demand transparency. Whether you're a developer or a manager or just a concerned citizen, advocate for greater transparency in AI systems. Encourage companies to share how their models are trained, what data, was used to train the model, how this data was gathered. This is essential generally for trust and accountability. Also, the third thing I would mention for practical applicability of this chapter would be to promote cross-disciplinary dialogue. So that would be to engage with communities across tech, ethics, and social sciences to discuss how to mitigate bias in AI. Support initiatives that promote inclusive data practices and robust ethical reviews of AI projects. So the I think now more than ever we need discussions that bring everybody in. It's not just AI people who train AI models talking about how to mitigate bias. We need everybody on board. We need both people from tech, people who specialize in ethics, social sciences. Everybody should join this conversation on bias mitigation. Now we move on to our last segment, questions for reflection for today. So I have three questions for reflection. The first one would be, how can we redesign AI systems to minimize the inherent biases in historical data? And what role can diverse data sources play in this process? So if you have an idea about how we can redesign AI systems to minimize inherent biases in historical data, I would really love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And that's because I have personally worked on, did some research, actually published a paper on AI bias, how it's propagated and a method for mitigation. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. Our second question for reflection is, in your industry, what concrete steps can you take to ensure that AI tools are used ethically and responsibly? And our third question for reflection is, how might the narrative around AI change if we celebrated its incremental progress rather than always seeking a miracle breakthrough? I thought this was a very good way to think about it. Celebrating incremental progress instead of seeking a miracle breakthrough. So this brings us to the close of our deep dive into chapter 12, Mythbusters. Um, Today we explored how Pamela Olsen, who is the author, dismantles the common myths surrounding AI, showing us that while these systems can produce impressive outputs, they are far from omnipotent or entirely objective. So through vivid examples like Gen AI that defaults to generic portraits and recruitment tool that reproduces historical bias, the author reminds us that AI is powerful, but it's also deeply intertwined with its limitation. So we would move forward in our next video, actually audio, uh, into the next chapter, chapter 13. And in this chapter, the author shifts the focus to the practical implication of these debunked myths on policy, everyday technology, and our collective future. I will see you on the next one. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe and I'll catch you. Thank you.